The moment the elevator doors closed behind me, everything changed in a way I could not fully understand yet. Just seconds ago, I had been the person leading a massive deal that would define my career. Now, I was holding a small box with my belongings like I never belonged there at all. I stared at my reflection in the elevator wall, trying to process how quickly everything had collapsed around me. Before the elevator even reached the lobby, my phone started ringing and I saw Leo calling me. I took a slow breath and answered because I knew avoiding him would only make things worse. He sounded excited and confident, like everything was still moving forward. I told him calmly that plans had changed and that I was no longer with the company. There was silence, and then disbelief filled his voice as he tried to understand what I was saying. He thought I was joking or trying to gain leverage, but I told him the truth clearly. I said I had been terminated effective immediately, and there was no negotiation behind it. The elevator doors opened, and I stepped into the lobby where everything felt heavier. Leo was standing there with his team, and he looked confused until his eyes landed on me holding a box instead of documents. A few steps behind him stood Peyton, still carrying the confidence of someone who believed she had done the right thing. Leo walked toward me quickly and greeted me like nothing had changed. I looked at him and told him the deal was over because I had been fired. His expression hardened, and he turned toward Peyton, demanding an explanation. She tried to justify her decision by pointing to company policy and said that my skirt violated the dress code by a few inches. The words sounded even more absurd when spoken out loud in front of everyone. The room fell into a strange silence as people began to realize what had just happened. Leo repeated her reasoning slowly as if trying to make sense of it, but it only made things worse. Gregory arrived in a rush with members of the board behind him, clearly aware that something had gone terribly wrong. He tried to calm the situation and said it was a misunderstanding that could be fixed quickly, but the damage had already been done. Leo stepped away and began speaking quietly with his team while I stood there watching everything I had built disappear. Every sacrifice, every late night, every decision I had made for the company was dissolving in front of me. Gregory came to me and asked to speak privately, but I refused because there was nothing private about what had just happened. I said clearly that his daughter had made a decision and his silence had supported it. Leo returned with a final decision written all over his face. He said that the agreement had always depended on me, and without me there was no trust left. Gregory tried to argue and mentioned the contracts and the timing, but Leo simply pointed out a clause that allowed him to walk away. It was a clause I had written myself to protect the deal if something happened to me. One of the lawyers quietly confirmed that I had created that clause and that it gave Leo the right to leave without penalty. The realization spread through the room, and I could see the impact of it on Gregory. Leo shook my hand and told me to contact him when I decided what to do next. Then he walked out with his entire team, leaving the company standing in shock behind him. I nodded once to the people I had worked with, and then I walked out as well, ignoring the voices calling me back. Outside, the air felt different, lighter in a way I had not felt in years. I had lost my job and watched my biggest achievement fall apart, but there was also a strange sense of relief. My phone kept buzzing, but I turned it off because whatever was happening inside that building was no longer my responsibility. That evening, I sat at home with a glass of wine and watched the sky change colors as the sun set. It had been years since I had taken the time to notice something so simple. News alerts started appearing, showing how quickly the company was falling after the deal collapsed. The numbers were harsh and thousands of jobs were at risk, but I understood something clearly. I had not failed them, their leadership had. For the next week, I stayed away from everything connected to that world. I rested, I cooked, I spoke to people I had ignored for too long. There was a calmness that I had forgotten existed. 2 weeks later, Gregory called, and this time I answered because part of me wanted to know what had happened next. His voice sounded tired, and the situation was worse than anyone had expected. He asked me to return and help fix everything that had gone wrong. He spoke about the employees and the damage and the urgency of the situation. I listened quietly and then asked what he was offering, because I was not going back without conditions. The next day, I walked into the boardroom wearing the same outfit that had been used as the reason to fire me. It was a clear message, and everyone understood it. The room was filled with people who now knew the cost of their silence. I explained the reality of their situation without holding anything back. Then I presented my terms, which were strict and non-negotiable. If I returned, it would be on conditions that gave me full control and ensured that I would never be treated that way again. They looked at each other, and then they agreed and signed. Coming back to the company felt different in every way. I was no longer sacrificing myself without limits, and I was no longer trying to prove my worth. While working to stabilize the company, I started developing a new idea that had been growing in my mind since the day I was fired. It began as something small, but quickly turned into something much bigger than I had expected. I wanted to create something that solved the problem that had been used against me. a clothing line designed for professional women that focused on adaptability instead of strict rules. The concept was simple but powerful, and the team I worked with brought it to life with energy and creativity. Months later, I presented it to the entire company and explained both the product and the story behind it. The reaction was immediate and strong, as people began to understand the purpose behind it. What started as a moment of humiliation had turned into innovation. The launch exceeded every expectation, and the response from the public was overwhelming. It was not just about clothing. It was about dignity, control, and redefining what professionalism meant. Over time, the company stabilized, but it never returned to its old position. The clothing line grew into something independent and successful beyond anything I had imagined. I created a foundation to support women facing similar challenges and turned my experience into something meaningful. A year later, I stood in front of the company again and spoke about growth and transformation. After the meeting, Peyton approached me for the first time since that day. She looked different, and her confidence had changed into something quieter. She asked about the program I had created and whether she could be part of it. I gave her the information and let her decide her own path without judgment. Looking back, I understand that losing everything in that moment gave me something far greater. What was meant to break me became the beginning of something new. It was not about revenge, but about creating value from something painful. In the end, I did not just rebuild my career. I changed its entire direction and found something far more meaningful than what I had lost.